Hi, and welcome to another episode of My Chat With by AussieTheatre.com. Today's guest has worked in the media industry for over 20 years. He's currently the station manager of 3KND, Melbourne's only Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander radio station. My name is Gabi, and this is My Chat with Gerry Lyons. Hey, Gerry.
Good to see you, Gabi.
You too.
All right, I've been in Indigenous media for around 30 years. I've been involved in Indigenous media, having been as the manager for Aboriginal media in Alice Springs, the Karma Network, which is the largest Indigenous network in the country. I was there for 16 years doing that until I came here as well, but I've been involved in other areas of media. I think that over those years, knowing so many artists, especially recording artists, Indigenous artists, whether they are Torres Strait Island or mainland, has really afforded me an opportunity to see how the industry has grown and changed. It also showed me the struggles that artists have, and not just presently with COVID-19. That's just one on top of many other struggles as they have as Indigenous people. The lack of support quite often in the past has been just supported each other. There's been community-based support, and then of course trying to get a $2,000 or $5,000 grant just to get them over the hurdle and to do something else, whether it's an EP or even albums, which Karma did a lot of back in the day too, and helped a lot of artists. Here in Victoria, when I came here, and I've been in Victoria about 3 years now, I noticed a big difference between desert country, saltwater country, freshwater country, all those different regions, different tribes and clans, how things operate. And I think for anybody, any organisation that wants to have a relationship with any Indigenous organisation, then you really need to go there and have face-to-face. You really need to go there, sit down and have those conversations, learn and do your homework, especially as media or journalists. Just because you're involved like 3KND and as a Aboriginal organisation doesn't give you, doesn't open doors immediately. You need to build up a respect and a reputation and a commitment that lets those artists or those organisations or individuals know that you respect and value them. Now, Gabi, you might think that applies in all areas, but in the Indigenous space, you're looking at a cultural wrap around, and you may be seen as somebody just wanting to grab a bit of information and take it for yourself, whereas it's a matter of building up and until you prove that you are genuine, that what you're there for is for them. As a radio station, we're very much about enhancing the voice to those that don't have a voice, a platform for artists, whatever canvas or medium that they're in, to offer them that opportunity to be heard and seen. So multimedia is a big thing when it comes to artists. A lot of them prior to COVID-19 had no idea virtually what a video conference was. I think they very much know what Zoom is now.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows what Zoom is, and even grandparents. And so there's been around the world a big upskilling of technology and how to use it. And that's been the most valuable thing in this space, because artists have gone online, whether it's through visual art, whether it's through music, whatever medium that they've used, they've gone to the social media platforms. And I think that's been the most incredible thing about what's happened over the last 6 months in this space. Because without that, people tend to get lazy, but people don't have the money especially community mob, don't always have the money or resources to buy a laptop, to connect up, to the internet, to have the broadband. Definitely would be big dollars, and to get government support in that wasn't around. It's more there now, and more support there now, with the federal government now coming on board and helping out artists. It took them a long time, because from day one, Gabi, there was no gigs. Gigs were cancelled overnight. Support artists, no exhibitions. All of that was gone, and quite often artists lived from gig to gig, from commission to commission. And then suddenly it was gone. And they went, oh yeah, might last a little bit.
It's a really tricky one. It seems like you guys are still running the station through it, which is good.
What I found is that our audience has increased. Because of the communication, the conversations we have on air, and even through our blogs and so forth, our posts, well, we're in their homes anyway, we're in their vehicles anyway, and during this pandemic that we've gone through, they've really relied on something which is familiar, someone that they trust and they know, so they tune in, their families tune in. Not just Indigenous peoples, but all peoples are tuning in more. I think we've had such an increase in phone calls and online engagement that's really been astounding. And it's been quite often they just want to ring up and have a talk. They'd ring up and say, please, I'm cold, can you bring some firewood to my place? I've lost my job, I can't pay my rent, I can't feed my kids, I'm not eligible. Can you bring me some food? And even though there's a lot of food banks around and that, Indigenous mob can be, they have a lot of pride like everybody else. And they can find it very hard to ask for help. But because we're in their homes all the time, we're family. And that family label is very powerful and is very trusting in this space. What we've been doing for the last 5 months is interviewing artists around Australia, not just Victoria, around Australia in all different mediums. So how are you going? What you doing? Tell people what you're up to. Have you gone online? Are you doing house concerts? Are you got exhibitions on, virtual ones? And that's been important because every time that we want support, we reach out to Indigenous artists and in whatever form and say, can you help us? We've got no money. It's a community event. Can you help us out, Russ? They always say yes. Oh, I just paid for my petrol or help me out a little bit, And this time, with the Vic NAIDOC 2020 event that we just held, the virtual concert we just held, we're up to 61,000 people that viewed it.
It's amazing.
61,000, 788,000 in a collaboration with the other partners. It just went right off. Why? Because there's a need to see your own people, a need to hear Indigenous music, a need to laugh through comedy. So what did we have in that mix? We had comedians, we had elders talking about NAIDOC, even though NAIDOC is postponed till November. We had the artists old and young, hip hop, we had hip hop and R&B, we had a bit of a country, you name it. All that, everybody, there was something for everybody. And I think, but more importantly, it was something for them. People logged in from Dubai, from the US, from Europe, from Germany, all around Australia, and from the Torres Strait Islands and Tasmania. Everywhere logged in, because this was an important moment. Because all we saw was postponing, cancelled. And we wanted to give the artists something as well and pay them. Pay the dancers, the artists, their support, elders. Payment is important because it shows that they are valued as well. And bugger it, a lot of them, no money for 4 or 5 months, no on the dole, nothing like that. When they got in front of the microphone, Gabi, a lot of them had tears first. They held that mic, they couldn't believe they were on Hammer Hall on the stage with a microphone. They were looking at it for a while. That's how much they needed it. You know, that's their craft. And so what a joy it was for, you know, us partnering up with the Arts Centre, Aboriginal Victoria, health organisations, to have all this, everybody to realise this dream that we have, this opportunity to give something to the artists and to the community was going to be powerful. And it's just blown us all away by how many have taken an active role in it. And the comments are still going on. The joy in those artists, you know, it's given them a moment of hopefully get over the next few months. So support by our industry, by media, and by the Arts Centre and many others is so valuable to letting the artists know that they're still appreciated. So this is a little step, but it meant so much.
I think it's a great step, and I would love to see, you know, these sorts of concerts continuing, whether it's just with Arts Centre or maybe different states around the country could do something with artists that live in different areas. I think it was a really great way for, as you said, people from not just Australia but all over to kind of tune in and see this amazing talent that we have here. That, you know, there's so much going on in the world that sometimes we forget about some of these musicians and some of these performers and some of these comedians. And this was a great way to be like, we've got so much, and they now have something to do. You've given them a stage and you've given them a microphone and just given them that space to get up and do what they love to do.
Even the crew at the Arts Centre, when I'm focusing on the Arts Centre, that was the latest thing that we've done. But the crew there, the staff and you know, the management team, they were so thrilled. They were stressed, first of all, because they hadn't worked with a whole Indigenous group in outside of theatre.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you got Uncle Jack Charles, they work with a lot. They've got the dancers as well, that they work with a whole lot of other, but not like this, where, you know, they had the scripts all down, they had the timing down, and then the mob come in and just ran it, you know, they were like, 15 minutes, we're going to talk about this first, you know. We're going to look at this, we're going to talk about this. And they were like, man, we're meant to be shooting now. And then, you know what, within maybe a couple of hours, the whole crew chilled. They started to understand and learn and accept this is another way. You know, this is a cultural way of doing things. There's conversations taking place. The artists and those that came along wanted to know if these people were, you know, were interested in culture, were committed to this project of NAIDOC and this concert. And once all of that energy changed and there was an excitement, man, it just flowed. You know, there was an acceptance. At the end of it, the amount of texts, the amount of people just going, you know, thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for allowing us to be part of it. You know, we all learned a lot from our professional team of production, you know, whether it's front of house with sound, lighting, mobs, you know, all those crews, directors. It was such a valued exercise that showed the artists and the elders and all those from the Aboriginal Torres Strait Island community, you know, what professional people did to enhance them and to make them feel so alive. That was a bonus.
I think that's great. And, you know, there's been a lot of discussion, especially recently, about representation and about how, you know, Australia as a country doesn't have heaps of Indigenous representation, and, you know, the younger generations aren't always seeing themselves in TV and movies and not hearing, you know, their culture on the radio. And I think that these sorts of events bring more attention. And I really like to hope that it's now given some of these kids more role models and more people they can look to and say, you know, that's my culture, and that's my people and my music and my art.
That's my mob.
Yeah. And I think that it's great because it's such a beautiful and rich culture, and I feel like so many people are missing out if you're not celebrating everyone in a country. If you're just focusing on one part of our culture, you're missing out on everything else.
I think it's hard for Australians, non-Indigenous people here, because they don't know how to connect or communicate. They're afraid that they'll do the wrong thing. You know, quite often it's just like, hello, you know, just be yourself. No one's going to bite you or jump at you because that person's coloured or that person's from another culture. You know, you don't have those issues that person's Italian or something else. You don't have those issues. So why is there a fear at times of connecting with an Indigenous person, an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander? Because they want that connection. When that fear comes up, it puts up an invisible wall in itself, where what happened at the concert, there was none of that. Everybody was treated as everybody else. There's no more colour. It was, let's get this done. And we're doing it for, not just for NAIDA, but for everybody out there who's doing it hard. And Black and White enjoyed and loved the concert. They loved that event. Here at K&D, at 3K&D, we were inundated with emails, texts, phone calls. You know, people just so happy and excited about it. And when it happened, oh, whoa, my phone didn't go quiet. In fact, it went dead. I had to charge it up a couple of times because of the engagement from people far and wide, and also from the artists and the elders. So I think don't be afraid to approach an Indigenous person, because they will pick that up very, very quickly, that you just are not comfortable. And then, of course, it makes you uncomfortable as well. You know, when it doesn't need to be. Be yourself. No, people aren't there to bring you down.
And I guess the best way to be comfortable is to get into the situation. If you avoid it forever, you're never going to be comfortable. If you keep running away, you're not going to be able to relax into it. So
this time we're in is a very unusual time, and it's another layer put on top of Indigenous people. For over 60,000 years, there's been issues. Over 200 years, there's been issues as well. You know, whether it's Australia Day, whatever. It's all that politics and around there, but it all comes down to the hurt. You know, the acknowledgement of that hurt. You know, and not that we're blaming people today for yesterday, unless, of course, there's not a acknowledgement of yesterday of the wrongs done. And it's like, why are you denial? And then all that pain comes up because of the parents and the grandparents. And then, of course, the history that's been discovered all the time of the atrocities. But the healing comes about by allowing platforms like art, like music and dance, storytelling. The greatest storytellers are Indigenous people. It's natural because they're always passing on. They have there's a joy in their voice. You know that from Uncle Jack Charles as well. He tells a story. He's expressive, you know, and the dance and all that is medicine and healing. And so we're seeing artists that are doing their exhibitions online, whether they come from prison. Amazing artists coming out of prisons and exhibitions online. They've learned to go virtual. You know, they are making an income being online and supporting their families in any way that they can. Not everybody is in there in prison, you know, that have done dangerous things. They've done some silly things. You know, that many will be there for traffic stuff, no licenses, unable to pay bills or whatever, and it builds up. Not everybody is in there for dangerous crime. and yet there's so many Indigenous people in prisons, jails, and you know all those stories. But the redeeming thing is that the platform's open now, and how smart and switched on. You ask an Indigenous kid about a mobile, you ask them about that, man, they can just, boom, they tweet it. They know everything about that phone. You go, how did you do that? There, boom. And there's a short movie already done for you. They've already done it. They knew TikTok before TikTok came in, Gabi. They know all of those platforms. Those right there. You got something wrong with your phone, you give it to one of the kids. They go, oh yeah, no worries. And it's done. It's done. Because these sort of things, this sort of technology are savvy in. So we need to be really enhancing that sort of thing with them, getting them training, getting them qualifications. They got the skill, but they want the piece of paper to help them and support them. Art, music, drama, storytelling. Again, I'm going back to that, Gabi, because that is very, very important, and it's natural in this space. And areas like the Art Centre and areas right around the country, whether there's home-based recording studios or so forth, that are now tapping into a lot more of that. And you're seeing podcasts everywhere. Oh my God, amazing podcasts. I said some amazing podcasts out there that really capture you. It's like the ebooks and all that out, well, podcasters are the bomb. We love all of that. For Indigenous media and for artists to grow into the future, that acceptance of this change, of this acceptance of all people, of all colours, is very important. We seem to be having that conversation for generations and generations. But with Black Lives Matter recently, it became a global mindset where people were forced to look at themselves and look at, inherited racism that they had, little things that they would joke about. They were no longer appropriate. That made you realise, even if you had a coloured friend, an Indigenous friend, and you made a joke, something that wasn't funny. In fact, it was never funny to them, but it made you laugh. All of that change is happening through all these generations, and it's been really pushed forward lately. But through the platform that you are able to offer through your arts, that expression is something that that all people look at. They look at that art, they look at that story, they look at that expression, and to them, they react to it in such a way that it takes them in, whether it's emotionally, whether it's healing. It allows them to let something go because it's been expressed, and they're finally able to. That someone else gets it. So we are so fortunate, us in media, Indigenous media, all of you Mob 2 and art, in all those forms, to give that opportunity to Indigenous peoples to express themselves and to allow them to shine.
That space is something that you've been fighting for so long, and it's a shame it's taken until now for some really full-on action, with everything going on in the States and now here. I think that people are more actively looking at how they treat each other and how they think about each other and how they think about Indigenous culture. And I heard so many people going, that's an American issue. Well, it's not an American issue. We've got issues here too. You're just not taking a moment to step back and look at what's going on right here in our country as well.
Indigenous people worldwide are caretakers for country, and sometimes governments or individuals don't understand the importance of connection to country, to their place, to their ancestors, and that's worldwide, whether it's in the rainforests of Peru and right here to the deserts of Australia, far and wide. And they are the people that governments need to be talking to for advice about how we can all get in harmony with Mother Earth.
if there were artists who wanted to get in touch with you, would they just contact 3KND?
Yes, please. Contact them. Ring now. 1-800. No, give us a call. Give us a call. We won't offer you steak knives and all that, but definitely we can put your voice on a platform, even your art too. We can display it on our social media. We get heaps of comments and so forth. So get on there. We can support each other. Great for us, great for you. So come on board. KMD is the place for you. Why? Because it's cool and deadly.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gerry. This has been such an amazing chat, and it's been great to hear from you about everything that you've been helping put together and everything else that's going on. It's a scary time right now in the world, and I think that, people like yourself keeping the art going is so important and so inspiring. So thank you for just doing what you do.
Gabi, it's a pleasure to be on, and ask everybody to be safe out there as well. And remember, if you see an Indigenous person out there on the street, or you got neighbours, say hello. Hello is very powerful. It's very warming. And what they say here in Victoria, woman jika, welcome.